Hi, this is Jean Henningsen with Monarch Leadership Group, and I'm conducting a leadership series entitled Leading Through Crisis, Making a Difference. And here with me today is Lauren Delorio. She is the president and executive director of the Community Foundation here in Marion County. So welcome, Lauren.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to actually see faces, since we're limiting our social, contacts. So great to be here.
Yes, yes, and it is nice to see your smiling face again. So tell me, how has the Community Foundation changed since this whole isolation order began?
Wow, a lot. I think that's probably the best place to start. Before the crisis, already had focused on a lot of our local nonprofits and helping them to build capacity. We were doing a lot of that through our professional education series that were being offered, as well as some on-site counseling for accounting and finance. We were also working very closely with professional advisors that are working with legacy gifts with their donors, and of course working with our donors that are looking to invest in the community. But when the crisis hit, it was a huge change for us as we started hearing from our nonprofits that, as you can imagine, we're in panic mode and not sure of what was coming. Along with facing the reality that now some of them would have to furlough or lay off employees. So we quickly shifted gears in order to be able to focus on that need of the nonprofits to help walk them through the crisis, resources and other assistance, like in the area of applying for the SBA's loans through the CARES Act. We wanted to make sure that they understood what that meant and how the process worked. And guess what? If they were affiliated with a bank that couldn't assist them, we were able to contact a few banks that had agreed to take them on during that time. And we're still doing some other things, but it's been a lot busier than I think most people would think. We've really, if you use the analogy of running that race, we're really sprinting right now to kind of help answer the call. Whereas maybe it would be better to be long distance running and planning things out. But, we do what we have to do in order to make sure our nonprofits are taken care of.
Right, right. So in regards to this sprinting, I used to be a runner and I was never good at sprinting. I just didn't have the stamina for that, or the strength for that, really. What I did have was the stamina long term for a marathon. So that's what I ended up doing, was running marathons. I know how sprinting can be so exhausting. So how are you managing that with your staff there and the ones that are being responsive to these nonprofits? But then also, are you seeing some of that in your nonprofits and how they're responding, and how have you been able to help them through this more on an emotional level?
Mhm. Yeah, I think the emotional toll that the crisis has taken, even though at first you don't necessarily feel it, but as time goes on, the stress that builds. And we found that quite a bit with the staff here. We had conversations about what we were doing and our services we're providing to nonprofits, and we felt that we qualified as an essential service, especially when we took on assisting the hospital district in their COVID-19 relief grants. We were actually helping with the process and coordinating everything. So, but I needed to be mindful a lot of every employee is different. And the idea would be, first, make them comfortable, make sure they're safe. And I'm sure you've heard this from, many community leaders. We have been blessed that we're in a huge building. So for some of us to be able to kind of space out in the building, we're fine. And that was an option. But I also wanted to make sure that those employees that felt like they needed to be at home and work from home, that they could do that. in order to give them peace of mind. For the three of us that are still in the office, our peace of mind was being able to come in here and work because it was kind of like our safe haven. I mean, I currently have I've got my college student home, my daughter that's, getting ready to leave for law school. And with them, they brought, other people to stay at the house from the very beginning, because they had no place to go. So that many people all under one roof, this truly is for me my kind of space where I can work, and it keeps me stress free, so to speak. As far as the nonprofits go, we spend a lot of time answering emails and phone calls and listening. That's kind of the bigger piece, is learning when to listen to them, and then from there offering them options and suggestions on how to make things better. But I think even just that listening component gives them kind of a sense of security, like that they're not in this alone. And we encourage them to continue to reach out during the crisis so that they can feel emotionally secure in what they're doing. It's this isn't going to be easy for anybody as we move forward, and we know we're going to see more of this. But as long as they know they've got a place to go, we're happy to provide that space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the emails that you've been sending out daily with all of the resources to some of these grants that you mentioned, and even webinars that they can join to help them with all different aspects of dealing with this crisis, I think has been incredibly helpful. I've really enjoyed reading them, and I've passed along a lot of the resources that you've shared. So I think that has been incredibly helpful. But the listening aspect, I love that, because of
Mm-hmm.
course a lot of times we don't listen as well as we should.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a position now where that's exactly what they need. They need you to listen to their concerns, and then hopefully you can provide a solution to them, even if it's a possible solution. But even if it's not, I can only imagine how comforting that must be to them, that you're listening. And so please tell us more about what you're hearing. What are these nonprofits needing, and how can people in the community perhaps contribute to that?
Oh, absolutely. So it's interesting that as we move forward in through this crisis, some of the things that we're just now starting to see from a research standpoint is, what does the climate and the look like for our nonprofits in the future? What are we going to see a year out from now? And to be perfectly honest, it's not looking that great, but it's got potential to get better based upon taking some action, I think. What we do know is that our nonprofits had to cancel their spring fundraising season. They've been asked to cancel their summer, and some have made a choice to wait to determine what they're going to do with the fall fundraising season. But what we do know is the potential for social distancing to continue is a reality, and that's going to change a lot of the fall events, which means we're going to look at the potential for a lot of our local nonprofits to lose 100% of their event fundraising income during the year. So they're going to have to refocus on their revenue diversification and
Yes.
where the other revenue streams are. So for a lot of them, it's going to mean looking at their donors that have consistently given, and making sure that they're cultivating the donors and having those conversations to keep them engaged. Um,
Yes.
and for some of them, they may have to look for other revenue streams. But again, they've got to be very careful about unrelated business income, because that, and taking on something that is totally outside of the mission, could potentially jeopardize their 501c3 status. So we need to have some discussions about what that looks like, and looks like not only from a nonprofit standpoint, but also in discussing with local area businesses and donors. What does that look like for them? We're anticipating that the majority of our local nonprofits are going to be heavily soliciting people because of this crisis, and soliciting businesses. But as you and I both know, for-profit business has been hit just as hard. This isn't something that is unique to nonprofits. So a lot of those that, as they're moving forward and trying to upstart their businesses by providing products to the community or services, they're going to ramp up. But they're also going to be very, they're going to probably withhold some of the donations that they normally would do for local nonprofits. So nonprofits are going to heavily solicit, and we're going to see probably a lot of donor fatigue where people are just going to be burnt out and just closed off to the idea of donating. Although with our community being as generous as it is, I'm hoping that it won't be quite that way. But I also do feel for a lot of the businesses that I know that continually support our nonprofits, that are going to have to make some difficult decisions on who they're going to support and who they're not going to support. And same thing with individual donors. When the markets kind of, fell during this process, a lot of individuals that had money, put into retirement or whatever, they're going to be thinking about whether or not they're going to donate as much as they used to. So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in the future.
Yes.
But sitting down at the table with our community leaders and lead organizations and having those conversations about what can be done, a good strategic plan of how we can assist those nonprofits, I think will be huge. And the understanding that, a lot of people will say, well, maybe this isn't so bad after all, because maybe that'll mean some of these nonprofits that duplicate services are dropping off. And I don't like to hear that, because we do have nonprofits within this community that are at various stages of the lifespan of the organization. They're maybe just starting, but they're providing critical services and they're working really hard to run like a business. And they're unique. So
Yes.
I don't think that it's right that they may have to close their doors because of the situation they're in. We've got to figure out ways to support critical services and those services that are filling gaps in areas that need to be filled. So I'm very hopeful that in the next month, we'll be able to sit down at the table with a lot of our community leaders and have those conversations and work out a plan to help our nonprofits.
Yes, absolutely. Because as I'm listening to you, Lauren, I'm thinking about the variety of nonprofits we have in our community and all the different services that they provide. They really support people so that these people can go out and support the private businesses, right? The for-profit. So the nonprofit is almost our bench strength, isn't it? And we need them, or the for-profits may not have as big of a comeback as they were hoping without supporting the nonprofits. So they really go hand in hand. And I have no doubt that a lot of the leaders in our community are going to see that. And definitely this interview and getting this out there so that our neighbors, our friends, right? People that may not have their own business or maybe are not in a position to provide this type of support from their income, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
happens to their business as the months unfold. Just the average person, that goes to work every day and is grateful for their job, for them to understand this, the importance of our nonprofits and what they provide to our community, I think is just critical that they know this so that we can, as you said, keep that donor strength and keep them giving and supporting all of our local nonprofits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even what we're doing with our grant services department here, we're plugging along, and we've been working with lots of nonprofits, and we have a lot of grants that are pending. We're even finding that regionally and nationally, some of those pending grants, we're trying to figure out where they are in the funding process. And there's been a shift among grantors all over the country, whether they're going to hold off and fund those grants until, after the crisis passes, which would be good. It's still the revenue that would be generated and coming in, but there are some that have decided that they're going to suspend, some of that to focus on the COVID-19 crisis, and we anticipated that. But there still are a lot of grants out there that could assist nonprofits during this crisis that we're open to working with local nonprofits to write for those grants, and help them receive some of that funding to get them through this time. So not everything has been, we're just like everybody else. We're trying to kind of morph our services to make sure that, the top priority is the nonprofit is taken care of.
Yeah.
And what is that going to look like? Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad you mentioned the grants, because that was going to be my next question about what other opportunities through the state and local governments were available. So I love that you provide that service, that you help them with the grant writing, because some of our smaller nonprofits, they may not have a grant writer on staff. So it's really important, the service that you provide to them.
Yeah, that is one other revenue stream that can be looked at. It's all part of the big process right now for a lot of nonprofits, and I have suggested from the beginning of this that that's the first thing they and their board should be doing, is sitting down and looking at their cash flow, sitting down and looking at the services they're providing to come up with a plan of what should they stop, what should they continue, and maybe something that may need to be implemented because of this crisis. But ultimately, then saying, well, where are our revenue streams coming from? We've got some nonprofits out there that are providing client services, and they receive government funding for those services they provide. So they're kind of dependent on whatever the government decides they're going to do in order to keep funding our local nonprofits. We do have a vast majority of them that, for whatever reason, have decided to just put their eggs all in one basket and just make events their big fundraising. So for those, I keep encouraging them, you need to look outside of the box. What other areas should you be looking at in order to be able to raise some revenue for your organization? And we'll continue to have those conversations over the next few months.
Yes.
So we're open to anybody that wants to chat.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, continue doing what you're doing. The fact that you all are sprinting, I just want to say, make sure you stop and rest and take care of yourself. I know you all are working really, really hard. So I really hope that you're able to maintain your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being through all of this.
Well, I think so. And we chat, we do daily Zoom meetings, staff meetings, which helps us all kind of stay on point. But the other thing that I love about the Zoom meetings, that I think the main reason why we do them too, obviously we should be keeping task of work, but it's important for us all to be able to see one another. I think that connection emotionally is huge for the staff.
Yes.
And I will tell you that I have been amazed with my staff. When we came into this crisis, it was truly like a war room. I have seen my staff step up and just amaze me with everything that they have been doing. So I think it's been, even though we've had some really difficult times, there has been really positive things that have come out of this when it comes to working together and teamwork. So I did say that once we can all be back in the same building again, I think the first thing I'm going to do is Betty cakes, and we are going to celebrate the fact that, yes, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're together again. We're back under one roof.
Yes.
It's always good to have that energy, but and we miss it. We miss each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you have the daily Zoom meetings, and how wonderful and how affirming to you as the leader that you're seeing how strong your staff really is. And sometimes we need this, right? We go through hard times, challenging times like this, and to be able to sit back and realize, wow, we didn't all fall apart. We came together and, stronger together, as we've been saying. So that's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Lauren, for all that you've done for our nonprofits. And I know that your job is long from being over.
Absolutely. But like I said, that's what we're here for, and that's our role in the community. And we're going to do whatever we can to make sure nonprofits have what they need and get them through this crisis.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you.